2025 is up to 12 days into the new year, and it may just be starting out, all right? But for some people, it's same old, as far as Nigeria is concerned. So again, welcome to another year in the land of unfulfilled promises and recycled excuses. While the rest of the world are turning over a new leaf, moving forward with innovation and solutions, Nigeria chooses to remain steadfast, loyal to its systemic failures and legendary mediocrity. Just yesterday, we had the latest episode in our Power Palaver series. That's what I like to call it. And no, it's not the usual, but a new one that even I was surprised when I read it. It's the power tripping incident on the Benin Omotosho line. Now, let me explain if you don't know what I'm talking about. Yesterday, there was a power outage and reports started pouring in that the almighty power grid had collapsed, okay? And all efforts were being made to restore power and transmission. Of course, power was restored, and very quickly, I must add. Now, I must commend the TCN on that, Transmission Company of Nigeria, but we heard that it wasn't a total power grid collapse this time. Apparently, we should celebrate that there's progress. Let's look at ourselves. A power grid that collapses 11 times a year is about as reliable as a campaign promise during election season. So, should we be praising them for the prompt restoration of power, or should we believe it was a power tripping? As always, with Nigeria, only time will tell. All eyes, in the meantime, are on the budgets from the federal to the state level. President Bola Tinubu has proposed a record-breaking 49.7 trillion naira federal budget, while Lagos State, that's the governor of Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has signed his 3.36 trillion naira budget of sustainability. And I know somebody somewhere is going to say, Judith, come on now, you pile on too much. You pile on the government too much. And to that I say, hold your horses, please. Just give me a sec. I have something to tell you. So Budget, a civic tech organization championing transparency, has once again highlighted glaring omissions and irregularities in the proposed 2025 federal government budget. Key agencies like the National Judicial Council and the TEF Fund are missing detailed budget breakdowns. Where are the line items, I ask? Now, significant allocations such as the 2.49 trillion naira earmarked for regional development commissions under personal cost obscure the true nature of the expenditures, undermining the very transparency we desperately need. Moreover, the conspicuous absence of funding for critical infrastructure projects like, my favorites, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. I love it so much. It raises questions about our commitment to development. Where's the line item for the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway? Because if such projects are later shoehorned into the budget, which essential services will be deprived of funding to accommodate them, it begs to ask a bigger question. What exactly are we sustaining? Because adding insult to injury, recent pronouncements about lavish military welfare packages, including bulletproof, SUVs, foreign medical treatments for generals, stand in stark contrast to pledges of reducing governance cost. So, is this the fiscal prudence we were promised? APC? So in 2024, over 7,400 capital projects totaling 2.24 trillion naira were inserted into the budget, many lacking proper conceptualization when you think about it, and even the cost estimation of this projects. This haphazard approach not only wastes resources, but also disconnects our financial planning from the nation's long-term development goals. And like I always say, if we are going to ask me to deliver offerings to the gods of the Lagos traffic, I will say, I deliver the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway as tribute, because the funding for that unnecessary project should have gone to the maintenance and upgrading for the craters that is filled on our roads that are costing us billions annually in lost productivity and vehicle maintenance. But hey, at least we're consistent. Consistently failing to fix the roads while consistently rising transport fares. And let's not forget our politicians as they cruise through it in their convoys, oblivious to the daily struggles of the citizens they claim to represent. Meanwhile, we're left dodging, left, right, center, the potholes, and praying our cars survive another journey. As you know, he's very good at swerving through those craters. He knows quite a number of them on the expressways. Lagos, Calabar, Coastal Highway. Hi, Mazino, good morning.
Hey, hi, how are you doing, man? This your, what's the word for the Lagos, Calabar, Coastal Highway? I think, I don't know where you're going to sell the beef after.
Look, it's cowtail, oxtail, you know what I mean? Like, I drag it. But hey, of course, welcome on to Breakfast Extra. Mizuno is here. My incomparable co-host. Is going to be quite an amazing time. The conversations is sublime. So get ready for the Sunday edition of Breakfast Extra.
Just as has been said, good morning and welcome to your favorite weekend breakfast show. It's none other than Breakfast Extra, the Sunday edition and final installment for the weekend. It's only the second one, but it's the final one anyway. Today our lineup is as exciting as ever. We begin with Big Report, where we'll delve into Nigeria's 2025 budget with a comparative lens on President Tinubu's 49.7 trillion naira federal proposal and Governor Sanwo-Olu's 3.366 trillion Lagos budget. What does this mean for governance and development for Nigeria's commercial capital? We'll find out. Stay tuned for expert insight. And then on a big story, we tackle pressing issues and, well, the deplorable state of Nigeria's roads. In our segment, now Path to Nowhere is what we're calling it. The cost of neglecting Nigeria's road network, we'll be exploring how infrastructure failures impact daily life and also the economy with expert opinion from an analyst from SBN Intelligence. This and many more, only if you stick here on the show. But for now, let's try and dissect this beef that Judith has with the Lagos-Calabar Highway. You do have your point, though. There is so much, or there was so much focus on the Lagos-Calabar Highway, and I think that they neglected everything else, all the infrastructure we had from before. You are right. Only just last week, right after the show,
You drove out, you went away?
I jumped on my bike and rode all the way to Ideze. Ideze is a small village in Delta State.
Right.
Got there about 6 p.m. after leaving here at about 11 after the show. However, I will tell you something. The road from Sapele to Warri, horrible.
I mean,
it's terrible, and it took me extra, especially that it was the Sunday, the very first Sunday. Was it the first Sunday last week?
Yeah.
And everybody was returning from villages, and you had to pass through the Benin bypass. I bet you the cars spent no less than 3 hours in that patch. In that part of the Benin bypass way, but it took me, it was easier on a bike. But that's just a small example and a right from the horse's mouth example of how deplorable the roads are. Right. Every single place you go, you start thinking, what about people who transport commodities, goods, cows, beef? Like the beef, Judith. We came right back to that. Judith's beef. So I do understand this beef.
Look. It is, that road, that project is inconsequential. I'm going to say it as it is, and I honestly...
To the economics of
I'm
Nigeria,
taking off
do you think?
my hat as a journalist, and I'm putting on my hat as a Nigerian. And I will say this, right? The project, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, has no effects on our economy. It is unnecessary. It's a legacy project at best.
Yeah. True. I did that. I gave that to Nigerians.
It's a legacy project at best. And unfortunately, it comes at a cost of people's jobs, people's ancestral homes, people's livelihood. And this all happened even without the due process. No due process, no environmental impact analysis, absolutely nothing. And
so
nothing. It should go.
I do understand your beef, as I said from before. In any case, let's now segue. My producer doesn't like that word. Into the dailies for this morning, and we're going to be starting with the Punch newspaper. Front and center for the Punch newspaper, we have this. 2027 anti-APC alliance seek Obasanjo go on other VIPs backing. And Shekarau shuns PDP leads northern heavyweights to unseat Tinubu. And under there you have how care for the marathon sex sends men from pleasure beds to early graves. I wish I didn't read that one second, but unfortunately I already gone and done it, so my apologies. American returnee leads robbery, kills Lagos Uber driver. Very interesting that. To the side of the paper here. Real reason I pleaded guilty to blasphemy, says jailed humanist, and over 26 senior officers redeployed in Army major shakeup. And Herbert Macaulay would have wept over Nigeria's current condition. 87-year-old nephew says, oh wow, well, I don't doubt that. How NNPCL delivered 2.3 trillion naira, that's $9 million, on probe invitations. On a report there on page 3 and on page 35, you'd find NIA, DSS should be disbanded for inability to track terrorism sponsors. Did you see the viral video of the army chief, and when he was asked by the CNN reporter regarding the sponsors of Boko Haram, he says his international detractors or something like that. And I'm wondering, the reporter went on to ask, to what aim? Why would they want it? Who exactly? That went viral last week. I didn't remember to actually talk about that on yesterday, but maybe we should in subsequent.
Yeah, I mean, we've also talked about security right here, and one of the things that's certain is that sub-Saharan Africa is still very much of interest. The destabilization of. I
will say something though. Whatever you say about the military junta in Mali, is it Mali? And when Traore was at the inauguration for what's his name, Mahama. Did you see the applause? Did you see that though? I'm not saying anything, but you can tell.
At first people gasp like,
yeah, exactly.
And like it's like, oh, he's here.
Exactly.
Oh, he's here. Like, yeah, it's like,
that was interesting.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
Yeah, the reaction was very interesting.
All right. So what next do we have? What paper do we?
So our next paper for today is the Daily Independent for a Sunday. There we go. The Sunday Independent, we're going to go quickly, the very first one there. 2027 presidential race, early opinions favor Tinubu, opposition leaders drifting apart by the day. Analysts, desperate ambition, disparate followers seen as drawbacks for contenders. You can find that story on page 2. At the top there, police boss Lagos killer, gangs targeting Uber drivers. That story is on page 6. Only peaceful revolution can save Nigeria from destruction. Onovo, that story there is on page 8. Coalition condemns Meta's dismantling of fact-checking mechanisms. That story is on page 6. On the bottom there, Kano Hills Appeal Court verdict on Emirate tussle, says judgment reinforces state's control over Emirate affairs. That story is on page 4. At the bottom of it, there's Southeast Senators throw weight behind new Ohaneze leadership. Senator Azuta Mbata's emergence a milestone, says Abaribi. That story is on page 5. Activists disagree over Tinubu's proposed youth confab. It's a laudable initiative. That's Ode there. That's a AMBYF leader. You can find that story on page 4. And right next to it, lawyers blast Okpolo lawmakers over sack of local government chairman deputies, say action an affront to the constitution, rule of law. You can find that story on page 3. And finally, we're prepared, Amotekun assures Southwest amid anxiety over influx of bandits. You can find that story on page 3. That's pretty much all of the papers we can take for this
unless
morning.
we want to squeeze in the Sunday Times that tells about the first collapse for the year, but I'm not. Yeah.
I know.
I just wanted. We have to talk about the first collapse. The first collapse of the year is an event. Let's celebrate it. National Grid collapsing again in 2025.
It says a power trip. A power trip.
All right.
Trip. There we go.
Oh, there you have it. Thank you very much. We bent our producer's will to put it up. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. We'll suffer for it later. Thank you. But let's now take you guys into our first big report for the morning. And hey, We begin with a very and deeply tragic story.
After we go on the short break?
Let's take a short break first, and then when we get back, we're going to talk about that big report. Thank you.
And you're welcome to our very first big report for today, Sunday. We're going to be looking at something very important, and it's all about our socio-economic climb, and this time it's budgets from the federal to the state level. Now, we understand that we turn our attention to Nigeria's fiscal priorities as 2025 is here, right? And at the federal level, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has proposed a record-breaking budget of 49.7 trillion naira, which has stirred debates over its feasibility amidst the nation's current revenue challenges. Meanwhile, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has signed the state's 3.36 trillion naira appropriation bill into law, which has tagged the budget of sustainability. Lagos State's spending plan reflects a focus on infrastructure and economic diversification, with a significant 62% allocated to capital budget projects. I beg your pardon. But what does this mean for Lagosians, and how does it align with the federal government's goals? We had our correspondent Lekon Onabanjo who went out and did a very insightful report regarding the budget. Let's take a look at the highlights. He takes us through the highlights of the Lagos State budget. Take a look.
The Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has signed the 2025 appropriation bill, earlier presented before the State House of Assembly into law. The bill, tagged Budget of Sustainability, is a 3.366 trillion naira package that aims to address infrastructure, economic diversification, and other critical sectors. Governor Sanwo-Olu said the budget underscored his administration's commitment to prioritizing infrastructure, with 62% allocated to capital expenditure and 38% to recurrent spending, representing a focus on driving long-term investment while maintaining efficient delivery of essential services. According to details, the budget's revenue framework projects 2.342 trillion naira from total internally generated revenue and 626.137 billion naira from federal transfers, with a deficit financing of 398.662 billion naira. The governor on November 21, 2024 presented a budget estimate of 3,535,998,198,401 naira. However, the State Assembly passed the 2025 appropriation bill, increasing it to 3,366,815,224,144 naira, stressing the imperative of developing the state's electricity, road infrastructure, and education, amongst others. Lagosians will be hoping that the 2025 budget will deliver on the promises of the Sanwo-Olu administration, while also improving the quality of life and pioneering the delivery of democratic dividends to all electorates. In Lagos for News Central, Lekon Onabanjo.
I want to say thank you very much to Lekon Onabanjo for bringing us that report. But here in the studio, joining us to have these very interesting conversation, we are being joined by Oludamilola Onameno, Gender and Research Analyst at Budget, an organization dedicated to budget transparency and also accountability. So, Damilola, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
All right, ladies first, please.
Oh, of course. I mean, let's talk about the 2025 budget, the Governor Sanwo-Olu's budget for Lagos, and it focuses on capital expenditure and sustainability. I mean, the first question, or the easy question, would be: does this align with the general consensus at the federal level, or the goals at the federal level?
So when we say align, we're talking about does it align with citizens' preference? Does it align with poverty reduction? Does it align with the labor force bringing about employment? Does it align with ensuring that capital infrastructure, especially roads, transport, education, health, are being prioritized? Yes, so the president has made a huge allocation of 49.7, and then the governor himself is making a 3.36, right? We cannot say for a fact that it's not ambitious for Lagos State. This is going to be the biggest budget that Lagos State has had in history. But then one thing I know with Lagos State is that as much as they are ambitious, they are go-getters. Yeah, so because Lagos has always proven itself to be a revenue-generating, well, I call it industry now, not just a state, a revenue-generating industry. So if it says, I'm going to get a 2.4 trillion naira, it's obviously may not reach it, but realistically, it will get to a 90%, there about 70%. And Lagos State has also shown that most times 80%, 70% of its revenue, total revenue, is highly dependent on IGR. That's what they gain within the state.
Let's talk about that IGR. 2.34. So is it 2.34? It's 2.34 trillion naira IGR. And then you said something that Lagos are we're very ambitious here in Lagos, and that, well, you call them go-getters, or is it tax collectors? I'm sorry. What I meant to ask is, how exactly does the Lagos State government intend to generate 2.34 trillion?
So yes,
pay no attention to tax collection that I mentioned, or do.
We cannot put tax collection aside. That is one of the huge avenues for Lagos State to mobilize revenue.
Does it contribute? How much does it contribute to the internally generated revenue?
It contributes over 70%.
There you go.
What?
Because for everything you do in Lagos, it seems you need to be taxed or you need to pay dues. We're planning on opening a small shop, a shawarma shop, and by the time we discovered how much we have to pay in dues and this and that, it was like, you know what, I'm going to do it again. So,
no, but then
any other strategies apart from...
The Lagos State government is very, well, I say it's very critical when it comes to...
contributing to the coffers.
Well, contributing to the coffers, but also collecting its tax. It's more of they have plugged in all of the leakages to say, yes, there are still some leakages to say, oh, they are losing out on taxes, some areas, but yes, they have plugged in most of the leakages to be able to collect those taxes. Will I say the taxes are enormous or they are in diverse numbers? Yes, everywhere you go to, there is some form of tax being collected. But then the Lagos State government also has different avenues with which it generates its revenue. The Lagos State has its own enterprises when it comes to transportation, waste management, water, and all of that. With water, we can't say how huge or how significant the contributions are. But when it comes to transportation, the entertainment industry,
everything else,
waste management, and all of that, yes. Compared to other states, yes, Lagos is doing significantly better, but yes, there's always room for more.
There's always room for improvement. Lagos State is also budgeting, and I want to get this figure correctly, 398 billion naira deficit. And the federal government as well is also grappling with revenue shortfalls. And so it begs to ask a question about the implications of such financing models for economic stability.
When you look at when we do the budgeting processes, most times it's inevitable to not have deficits, right? You should have deficits sometimes. Yeah. But when your deficits are growing enormously by the year, it's now calls for what is the state going to do to cut the cost of governance? What is the state going to do to ensure that they have some form of fiscal prudence within themselves? 300 billion naira in deficit is a lot. And Lagos State is the state with the highest debt. Lagos is the state number one highest debt, highest foreign debt. Not just public debt, highest foreign debt. So when you have the highest foreign debt, it simply means you are susceptible to exchange rate volatility. In 2022, Lagos State recorded 1.3 trillion naira in debt. As at the end of 2023, it was already going above 2 trillion naira in
not because we borrowed more, but because of the exchange rates tripling.
So it's more like you still borrowed. So the borrowing is not as significant as the impact of the exchange rate on on the debt burden that Lagos State has. And when you now look at, okay, the debt sustainability of the state, so in budget we have a way, we have a methodology we use to calculate states' debt sustainability, and we look at how your foreign debt impacts on your total public debt. When it goes above a certain threshold of 50%, we know that you have gone above and then you're not doing significantly well. And Lagos State has gone above 50%. Or when your personnel cost to your revenue is quite significant, higher than 40%. For Lagos State, they don't do higher than 40%, but when you now look at other things like your total debt stock to your revenue is going above 200%. All of these put together is ensuring that Lagos State is, I won't say in dire situation, but they should tread carefully, especially in terms of accumulating more debt. You're looking at 300 billion. It simply means that that 300 billion will still fall back on some sense of borrowing, because you have not put out a spelled out strategy on how you're going to finance that deficit.
Oh, it's tax now.
No, so the tax is involved in the what you call it, in the internally generated revenue, which is already accounted for in the 2.4 trillion. So that 300 billion in deficit has not been accounted for as to how they are going to finance it, so which will now fall back on loans, because if they're always thinking about grants and grants and grants are not certain. Grants depends on the perception or what is going to be the incentive at the end of the day for them to get those grants. So.
Judith, I don't know if we can shift to the federal
of course.
System
now. Go ahead, because I was about to.
With the federal budget and the omissions, the myriad of omissions, especially the big one, the elephant in the room that Judith has been trying to hack all weekend.
Oh,
she's got beef for it. It's the Lagos Highway, which seemed omitted. How does that happen?
It has always been omitted. So even in the 2024 budget,
it wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
Yeah.
2021. So in as much as they say, oh, this project is something that has been thought of for a long time, it has not been budgeted for. And then one would think with all the controversies that happened last year about the project, it would now be accounted for. So if we're spending 49.7 trillion in a year, and that's capital intensive project, it's not even part of the 49.7, then what are we doing?
Thank you. Now,
oh dear, we've gone and done it. we've woken the beast.
Away from that, let's talk about something that I would like for us to really discuss, and that's the subsidy.
Okay.
We removed the subsidy. Where did they redirect it? Are we having those conversations? Also, the line items in terms of agencies, ministries, and departments, it still needs to be probed. And lastly, personal expenditures, or expenditures like furnitures and everything else, it still needs to be probed. The question I'm asking is, when has budget been able to raise concerns or questions about redirection of our subsidies and where they went to in the last budget and this year's budget?
Okay, so the whole process right now is, there's no
shrouded.
Shrouded. There's no form of direction, because we don't even know what our implementations look like at the moment. Since 2023, fourth quarter, up until now, we have not seen any budget implementation reports, which now seems to show that we don't know what exactly it is we are saving in terms of this subsidy removal. What exactly is the exact amount to now say, oh, this is where we can redirect it to. We don't even know if we haven't saving anything at all, because everything is, this month you're hearing there's subsidy, this month you're hearing there's no more subsidy. This month, the fuel prices have gone up. They will now come out and say, oh, we're still paying some small money here in terms of subsidy. So at the end of the day, we don't know what exactly we have gained, or what is the return in, I won't call it investment, return in policy right now on that subsidy. And then when you now look at the budget and you're looking at different line items, or what we have for agencies and all of that. One thing that's very interesting is the development commissions, especially the new ones that were created. So we have the Niger Delta and the Northeast that has always been in existence. But now we have the southeast, we have the southwest, and we have the northwest.
Right.
Right. And these commissions were created for the fact that they are supposed to provide some form of poverty alleviation. They are supposed
Sustainable
to
developmental goals.
Yes, they're supposed to ensure that there's rehabilitation of infrastructures that were damaged due to some form of terrorism or insurgency in these regions. And then we looked at the budget recently, and we found out that all of the allocations, most especially for the new ones that were created, were now only for personnel costs. So you're having 2.45 trillion naira just for personnel costs, which defeats the purpose of why these agencies or why these departments were created, right? So, and they have no provisions for capital projects at all. So all the 2.45 trillion is for personnel or payments of salaries and social benefits. And you're looking at agencies that could really use these monies, like the humanitarian ministry or the women affairs ministry or even health, right? Just to boost up their own allocation to ensure that it's something that is tangible.
And then there's also concerns about our inflation numbers, right? And whether we like it or not, Lagos is, I want to put the state and federal on the same level in terms of inflation and cost of the living costs, cost of living crisis, there we go, that we're constantly seeing. At the federal level, they have sort of proposed that the inflation will drop by 10 points to about 25, 27%?
15%.
15%, there we go, from 37%, 37.4%. We're going to bring it down. Now, the economics is a completely different conversation entirely. But with the borrowing, with the capital-intense budget that we're looking at, do you see our cost of living crisis sort of ease?
No.
Oh dear Lord. I was hoping you were going to say yes.
No.
But
So-
not a very good way to start a Sunday, is it, Judith?
No. Because when there's no clear cut out strategy to say, oh, we are improving on productivity, we are improving on employment and the labor force, we are improving on food security, we are also working towards ensuring that we build a sustainable economy that is not just import dependent, but also export dependent, and not just export dependent, but export of value goods. So we're not just exporting anything, we're exporting expensive and valuable things. Then that's when we can now start the conversation of reducing inflation. That's productivity matters a lot. You can do all the monetary policies you want to do. You can do all the increasing of interest rates. You're just going to be pressing on the necks of your citizens. At the end of the day, you are not achieving that inflation reduction, except you improve on productivity. So what's the government's strategy to say, oh, I want to improve on productivity. I want to ensure that we are creating more jobs, people are producing more, we are improving the spending capacity of people in the country. It's not just by increasing the minimum wage. Increasing the minimum wage when things have skyrocketed in prices is just going to be another avenue for more inflation, right? So when we say we have actually ensured that there is enough productivity to back up the economy, then we can now start to talk about inflation reduction.
I have two questions. One regarding the pegging of the dollar to 1,500 from 1,700. How safe is that?
It's not even how safe is that, how doable.
How doable is that, I should ask?
How doable is it? Well, it's not totally dependent on us as a country. Yes, that's one that we should note. Like I said, increasing the productivity of the country, increasing how much we export as a country is one that can ensure that our foreign reserves improves really well. Yes, so over the 1 year or two, foreign reserves have had some form of little bit of increment, yes, but or stability, like I'll say. But yes, we need to do more to ensure that our foreign reserves are in good states, and then we have more exports as a country.
Okay.
One way or the other, the exchange rate can now start to appreciate.
This might be my final question, but I wanted to take a look at some of the major sectors and how the allocations went. Education got 3.52 trillion, health 2.48 trillion, infrastructure 5.06 trillion, defense got the highest at 4.91 trillion.
So is it federal now?
Yes, federal, yeah. So my question is for defense, is this a safe figure, noting that we had much ado about security last year and how much was spent in security, especially when it comes to ransoms and all of that? This was a big conversation 2 weeks ago. Is it adequate for defense? 4.91 trillion. What do you suggest?
So defense has always had the highest
highest
allocation in like the past 10 years. But I also think we should also look at how much of improvement we have seen over the years in terms of security in the country. And then we should now also look at in-depthly what is this budget for, right? Are we having this high prioritization to defense because we are improving the technical capabilities of the servants in the sector, or is more of you're just bringing out different forms of line items that cushions the people at the top to make their lives better, or you're bringing some form of retirement benefits for the people at the top to ensure that their lives are better. When we look at it in-depthly, it's more like, oh, the police academy is having 1.2 trillion, or the police affairs is having 1.2 trillion. Has the salaries of the police improved over the years? The people in the army or the navy, have they had some significant form of welfare packages to ensure that their lives that they risk every time has some form of insurance or reassurance by the time they get back from wherever they have gone to serve the country? So yes, these are some things that I feel like we should look at before we now start to say, is this adequate enough? Yes, we'll have the highest allocation, but is it necessarily improving the lives of the citizens by not just providing them with these personnels, but ensuring that also the personnels are good enough or are well taken care of to be able to carry out their duties.
No.
Let's come to the state level. Lagos State has allocated 62% of the budget to capital expenditure. Do you think that this would impact, in some sense, the critical sectors that we have positively? Would it impact those critical sectors like healthcare, education, security, roads, traffic?
Okay, so I would like to actually see it work, because yes, you can have these big allocations
62
to so many things, but when we don't see it work, or when we, because last year we had 2.6 trillion in budgeting for Lagos State, and then you still see that the roads are not fully patched, or you're going on the roads and you're having so many potholes, different manholes opened and all of that. At the end of the day, you're thinking to yourself, what was the impact of last year's budget that they are now increasing this year's budget, right? There are people who have not seen water, that's water coming from Water Corporation of Lagos State, for almost 6 months.
6 months?
6 months?
Yes. 6 months is small.
Oh, stop. We laugh. Never seen that entire life.
Why are you talking? I can't even remember the last time I saw like
You
water
wouldn't
from the
exist.
tap. Does it exist?
No, they still do. But
Interesting.
so
You have to take us to these
Last
places
time
where
was
it
like
exists.
97.
Wow.
97? Yeah.
Wow.
97.
There's a big reservoir in Festac. I don't know if it's ever worked. It's humongous. It's a landmark. And to tell you the truth, it must have been in the 80s when it quit working.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's still some areas that get water, but I'm very certain of one particular place that I know that for 6 months they haven't seen.
We need to cut this part of the show out and put it up on Instagram. But yes, but go ahead. I apologize.
Yes, so how is it benefiting these people? Like, what has been the improvements that have been made over the years, right? And then we say, oh, we're spending so much on traffic control, transport, and all of that. How has it improved? And then we see that you have so much of the budget. And one thing I wanted to just say before is that you find out that the green line that Lagos State wants to control is not even under the budget of Lagos State, it's under the federal budget. So we now start to ask, is this a state action or is it actually a federal action?
What are the implications there?
Because if it's a state action, when it comes to light as a state enterprise or whatever is going to be, whatever funding goes to the states before they give a particular percentage back to the federal government. Because if it's now for the federal government, it goes straight to the federal federation account, because some is now giving back to the state. So we need to know that this funding, because around 140-something billion naira, right? This funding is going in the right direction, and it is owned by the right bodies, whether it's a state or a federal action, it's owned by the right bodies. So there needs to be that clear cut out. And then because we've not really seen the deep line items of the state budget, unlike the federal that we've seen all the line items, it could now be that Lagos State government has also created their own budgets for the green line, so it's more like duplication. Of resources.
I mean, we also have to talk about, the MDAs and, most importantly, the transparency in terms of implementation. Because we can have these conversations and scrutinize the budgets and, look at it and all of that. But the truth of the matter is that, I mean, Lagos already signed into law. Federal is very close, is one step away from being signed into law as well. And so we have to now start talking about the proper implementation of these budgets and transparency and accountability. My final question for you is, how can it be ensured that the MDAs are implementing the budget and is utilized for the sake of Nigeria?
I think the first point of call is in terms of disbursements. How much is even actually being disbursed? Many times we don't have those exact figures, because even when they release implementation reports, they don't release it per line item. They just release as a sector. This was what was disbursed. This is what was utilized, right? And we even end up finding out that when you disburse, the utilization is not even up to 50% or 70% sometimes, right? So it's more of how much is being disbursed to these sectors, how are they now being implemented? I know for the federal government, they have a portal called the Open Treasury Portal, where we see daily payments that goes out of the MDAs, right? So at the end of the day, it is more of these daily payments, are they linked to line items? That's something that we've not been able to achieve. And we're hoping that with engagements with the federal government and the Ministry of Budget and Planning, is something that we can actually achieve, that when these disbursements are being made, or these payments, these daily payments are being made, it is linked to what exactly the line item is, so that we know what has been disbursed. So if we know that for the Sokoto Badagry Highway, you have disbursed 50% of the amount, it is now then to go and track to say, this 50% of the amount, what stage has this project gotten to? That can we now say that in the next 1 year or 2 years it will be completed? Most times we don't see all of those. That's why a Lagos Ibadan Expressway will appear in the budget for almost 10 years, and we don't know what exactly has actually been disbursed from all of the allocations.
Well, Olu Damilola, I must say thank you, Onanomo, for just taking out the time today and joining us this morning, quite bright and early, to just have this discussion with us.
As the calm nature with which you tell such critical issues,
so
like as if it's nothing to worry about.
Easy.
We're going to suffer. We're gonna burn and crash, but we'll survive.
She's like, I am, it takes time to deliver this news of doom and gloom.
Exactly.
Just gonna
what better way to serve it than to just be easy about it? Well, thank you very much for joining us once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you very much for sticking around. Do stay tuned. We've got the news perhaps coming up, and then after that, more discussions inside of Breakfast Extra. And you're welcome. It's time for us to take a look at the strips from last week. We have some very funny ones that you guys might like to sink your teeth into, at least just maybe ha-ha at. Judith, are you with me on this one? Because it's going to be quite interesting, so I'll need your backup, yeah? Thank you, thank you.
Anytime, anytime.
Grand. Now, let's begin, shall we, with our first strip for today. If I can get that up on the screen right now. Good. We're going to be starting from Business Day, of course. As usual, Business Day always has a very, very interesting take on art for life. And you can see all our retired Army generals. Judith, we just talked about the defense allocation for the federal budget. And if you remember, our guest talked about exactly what these budgets are going for. Are they going to help buy more infrastructure for the Army or equipment or this or that? Or are they going to be spent on our past generals or maybe retirees and all of that? Look at this. SUVs, retirement benefits, all of that from the Nigerian Army. Where will all this money come from, perhaps? Defense allocation? I don't know. I'm just saying. But wait, I was still on that one, guys. Let's go back to that one if we can, because that was a very interesting one. But yes. So Judith, what's your take on this piece of art? I think this is Okpara's. What's your take?
Where are they coming out from? It's what's the
Nigerian Army. Oh, thank you very much. Look how derelict that building is. But look, they're all coming out with SUVs and benefits that are, I mean, one of those SUVs is better than that infrastructure, whatever it is there.
Chai. I mean, the picture says it already. I don't know what else to add to it. You know
chai is okay.
Chai is
yeah,
chai.
Which could be tea in some parts of Nigeria, but chai is if you're not from here, it's
I'm also jealous of them as
overwhelming
well,
sense of what was that?
I'm also jealous of them as well. But notice how they are gagged.
Oh no, you can't say anything. No. Where did you get that from? Mum's the word. Yeah. Have you?
I don't know. I haven't felt like this in a while, and I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
I feel jealous, but at the same time ashamed
and disgusted.
And then at the same time, I'm questioning if I was put in those shoes, would I do the same with living cost crisis? And then I'm beginning to question my morals.
Let's not get carried away. Remember, this is just a depiction. We are not certain exactly whether this is the true nature of things in the Army, but it would seem so, seeing that nothing is changing, like our previous guest told us about these allocations. What changes after such a big budget is put into whatever sector? The roads, do they get any better? Security, does it get any better? Or is it for the people at the top, or guys at the top? But let's move on. There's plenty more to talk about, Judith. Our next one for this morning is coming from Booyah, Business Day. And of course, the Sukwo is the Business Day cartoonist, and he's he's a very interesting fellow. Welcome to 2025. I'm not sure exactly why that is in reverse, but here you can see photo shows a prominent associate of the president entering the new year quietly, having ditched his flashy fleet, including 4 Rolls Royces, for a more austere, poverty-embracing lifestyle. If you lived in the Amour-Duffy area in the 80s, I don't know, Judith, I'm showing my age again, yes? I know, I'm sorry. But do you remember what these were called?
You know, I didn't play a lot on playground. I wasn't a child. They didn't let me. No,
you were born grown.
I was.
We used to call them Boris. Well, it's actually a little bearing inside of these wheels, and they rolled very efficiently. But we used to call the entire contraption a Boris. But is this the 2025 outlook for most of our prominent Nigerians after the government and the presidency has told about the austere measures that they might be employing? Does it seem so? We have a new jet. Everybody's giving lawmakers SUVs and this and that. I don't know if we'll ever see such in real life. But your take, though.
Wait, Mzino. Are those ruling elite or the everyday Nigerian?
Are those what now?
The person who's riding the Boris.
Oh, no. He's a
He looks like, yeah.
President. Yeah, he's in power and everything, but you know, this is perhaps maybe what we're hoping that, it's never going to happen. Never going to happen. Let's move on now to our next strip for this morning here, a Sunday, and of course, sometime about now. I don't have that magic, unfortunately. Let's move on, guys. Let's move on to our next strip for this morning, which I'm hoping is going to be that for the Daily Trust. Daily Trust got this one. Dad, aren't you worried about the splitting of Zaria Aviation College into 6 regional campuses by Tinubu? Dad says, no, I'm worried about poverty. That college is only for the elite anyway. Very, very true. Many things are happening inside of Nigeria. Policies are changing, but how many of these policies actually trickle down and touch the lives of the average Nigerian? And we mean the actual people who the government is supposed to be governing over, trying to provide them with infrastructure for health, transportation, and all of that. Are we seeing these happen, or are we being distracted by all of the happenings in the different parastatals here and there? Is that what Nigerians really need now? What we need now might be petrol prices reduction, or perhaps maybe removal of certain taxes or rent. I think that will touch people better. But then again, well, I guess defense is very important. But is that what's top on every single Nigerian's mind right now? I think it's their stomach, if you ask me. Judith, your take. She breathes. Judith, help me out today. Everything's overwhelming you today, I see, yeah?
Yeah, it is. So
there we go. Judith,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's all right. I understand. And it's only the second week in the year, and we're this overwhelmed.
look,
Let's try and move on while you're telling. Go ahead.
so two things here, right? The father makes a very, very good case when he says, no, I'm worried about poverty. That college is only for the elite anyway. He makes a very, very valid point. But what's interesting is that it's a girl who's telling her father.
Oh, well, these characters are with Daily Trust. They always have this character, the girl and her father having dialogue every single time. Yeah, but your point was?
Yeah. But Mazino, did you notice what's on her arm?
Oh, no, do tell.
That's Pakistan's flag.
I totally didn't see that.
That is the Pakistani's flag, and her father has the kofini. That's on his neck as well.
That's very interesting.
That's so
inclusion
brilliant.
There.
Yeah.
Very brilliant. Very, very brilliant. But of course, you know who it is, yeah?
Yeah, Ballad Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been doing that for a while now. He's infusing these little ideas into his art, and I find it very brilliant. If you don't look, like I didn't see that. If you don't look well, you might not see it, but then when you do, it's like an aha moment, like, oh wow, that's interesting. Thank you very much, Bola Ahmed. Thank you very much, Daily Trust. Let's see our final one for today. I think we had a glimpse of it, a peep into it from before. That wasn't what I was referring to, but this is okay. I'm sending a message of congratulations to the new Ghanaian Vice President, Mahama. Oh, I see, thank God. She's not a Nigerian. How? She wouldn't have become the VP. Why? Some people with uncommon backwardness would have told her to go and work in a nightclub. Do you remember that occasion from last year, Judith? Who are they talking about? Tell us. Fabio?
But look, this is so brilliant.
It is, isn't it?
So nicely done, because shame on you people now, shame on Nigeria. And again, we like to one-up Ghana, but it took them, it took just one election cycle, or it took them, I mean, if you want to look at the independence and ours, almost the same.
Almost the same.
Almost the same years of independence, almost the same years as democracy, even though theirs has been longer and it's more stronger when it comes to West Africa and the entirety of Africa itself. But it's brilliant that somebody has finally said this thing that, the quiet part out loud. They have done the thing that we, Nigeria, who claims to be the giant of Africa, the commercial hub of West Africa, we claim to have the best jollof rice and the best Afrobeat music and the best films.
And the best president.
The best, I don't say that one, but I mean,
I tried. But hey, Namibia's done it. Namibia did it on a higher level president. We had Liberia as well. Maybe Nigeria's just biding its time. Maybe we'll get there eventually. I don't know. Let's give it a chance. Give it a chance. Final one for today. Let's check this one out. Come on, guys. Let's put this up. I want to talk plenty about this. The next one is fantastic. Yes, next. Now, do you remember the picture of Tinubu receiving Anthony Joshua with that golden glove?
yes.
Somebody finally decided to do something about it.
Oh, no.
I think he's looking for new sparring partners so that he can try the new gloves he got from Anthony Joshua. Hardship hunger, poverty. Yes, you guys pug up. But I think that's just on a light-hearted note from the Guardian newspaper. In any case, that's the way Nigerians feel about their president. We are the enemy at this point, is the argument. Judith,
oh,
please.
goodness. Do you know what's interesting about the pictures is the fact that how he's towering over them. He's literally a giant over them, right? It's like, pick your own size, you know what I mean? Like, the gloves are almost the same size as his opponents, like the people he's about to, you know, spar with,
against,
you know?
yeah.
You know, you can see how the difference is just, it's amazing. But again, all of this, I mean, all of this is...
reflective of situation?
Yeah, it is reflective of our situation, and then the fact that he's shouting next. You know what I mean? Like it goes.
I'm done with a couple others. Oh, is that it? I thought there was one more we actually brushed on the other time. I really wanted to talk about the one with the Boko Haram instance. I'm going to be very quick on that one. If I can find that one on the screen real quick. Let's see. It's not coming, Judith, unfortunately.
Yeah, it goes.
Yeah, producers don't like me today. Don't worry, it's okay. Thank you, guys. In any case, we love the strips here on News Central, and we always beg that you tell us exactly what you'd like to see next time. If you find any from through the week, maybe you could send it to us, and we'll have it exhibited come Saturday or Sunday. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Judith. I'll be coming back to you, and then we can have more conversation inside of Breakfast.
Oh, yes, indeed. Let's talk football and turn our attention to Nigeria's national football team, the Super Eagles, and the latest development that has ignited debates across the country. After months of speculation, the Nigerian Football Federation, NFF, has named Eric Chile as the new head coach of the Super Eagles. The former Mali national team coach steps into the spotlight, tasked with leading Nigeria through the rest of the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers and the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. While Chile's appointment has drawn mixed reactions from fans and pundits alike, his record offers both promise and questions. With a history of dynamic tactics and a preference for attacking football, will he be the one to unlock the full potential of Nigeria's talented roster?
No, we're going to find out. But joining us today, two insightful analysts, Ezeogu Chukwudi, also known as husband material broadcaster and digital content creator. He's joining us live in the studio here, and Daffy Otite, a sports journalist and analyst specializing in African football. Let's start by looking at the highlights of Eric Chile's coaching career and what his appointment means for Nigerian football. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daffy, for joining us.
Indeed. So,
Thank
you. Daffy, let me start with you, Daffy. The highlights of Chile's career, what would you say they are, and how can they be applied in the system that he is stepping into now, barring any frustration? I'm sorry, forget that last part. Well, go ahead.
No, I think if you're looking for a highlight, when you look at his work with Mali, he's taken them further than they've ever been. Not ever. They've taken him further than they've ever been in the last 10 years, for example. When you look at Mali in AFCON, they've typically, I think previously they've come third, they've come fourth, but that was pre-2013. After 2013, they've typically come out after the round of 16 or not even qualified for the quarterfinals. And this last year is the first time they got to the last 8 of AFCON. So that will be a highlight, and that is a positive. Mali, yes, may not be one of the powerhouses of West African football, but they have ambition, and every once in a while they have a good team. He has taken them further. Since 2013, yes, we've won the AFCON, but come close since then. So it's looking for somebody who can get that little bit more out of the squad, out of the team, and will he do it? It's up to anyone's guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to come back in the studio here. Chukwudi, let's talk about his achievements in terms of the fact that we always meet Mali at the AFCON matches. And we always get, well, hang on a second, we always beat Mali except the one time. And the one time when they beat Nigeria is the fact that Chelle here was the coach. Do you think that that has anything to do with, with his appointment?
I don't think it has anything to do with his appointment. I think for the NFF, it's essentially about getting a manager that has the quality, looking at the array of stars that we have in the Super Eagles of Nigeria, and essentially somebody who they can afford to pay. I think that is just what influenced that decision, because there are a couple of very, great managers who have done really well with African teams on the continent, but they cannot afford to pay those guys. That I'm sure influenced the reason to opt for Eric. And I think we were not ready. We were not ready. If we want to, take a holistic view of our situation right now and proffer solutions to the challenges that we are faced with, look at the quality of stars that we have on parade, but it would appear like, you take 10 steps forward and you take 20 steps backwards. This is the team that featured in the finals of the AFCON. Although a lot of people were not expectant when the competition started, but looking at the quality of our play and how the guys gave their best, a lot of Nigerians were hopeful. But it would appear like every year we show that spark, and thereafter we go back to discussing our problems and thinking of what to do. I think that what we should just do is, go back to the drawing board. I mean, the appointment has been made already, but we need to go back to the drawing board and tell ourselves that if it will take us 10 years to develop our football, we would be willing to make that sacrifice. I think, months from now, we are still going to come back here and discuss the problems with, Coach Eric. And that's because a lot of Nigerians are expectant. We want to qualify for the World Cup, and it will be nothing short of a miracle to qualify from the position that we find ourselves in right now. And afterwards, what next? We'll come back and say, oh, maybe we need to, if we had, and we go back to discussing the problems again. So I think for now, it's just a new manager. Try as much as you can to see if you can stabilize the team, and thereafter we'll go back to the same problems.
Also, Material, you need to understand that we're very religious people, and we believe that we'll pray it out. Anything can happen. Please, let's have faith. But let me come to you, Daffy, and just, Husband Material raised some very, very solid points, right? And most importantly, he talked about the team in and of itself and how our roster is filled with very talented players. Now, Eric's style is known to be attack football and very flexible strategies. Do you see this in an advantage position, him now coaching this team? Will he be able to wield that to the type of play that we see with the Super Eagles?
Yeah, we have one of the most fearsome attacking players on the continent, and to have an attacking manager, it only bodes well for the team. However, the issue, I agree with a lot of what Nedu said, with us getting coaches that we can afford. And when you look at it, all of the coaches that we have had, we've had, 5 coaches in the last 4 years. That is not stability. That is just us jumping from one fire to the other. Will he do well? We always look for a coach that has potential. When we employed Raw, he hadn't won anything previously. When we went to Pesero, okay, yes, Pesero had won in Portugal, in Egypt. He had won things, and we didn't give him the time that he required. We also looked at Finidi Eguavon. So it's a lot of trial and error that we've been doing. And until we stick to one thing, one person, if we give this man enough time to bed in, and we allow him to do his work, choose the players that he wants, choose the first thing that he wants, because we always hear sound bites from NFF officials or ex-NFF officials talking about having slots. This is my player, this player must be in. If he's allowed the free rein to choose his players, choose his tactics, and give him the time then there's a likelihood that we make that one step that we failed last time. The flip side to that is, while we are giving this man time, what are we doing with the coaches that we have within Nigeria? Like they say, we've not had any CAF coaching certification courses over the last many years. They've held one CAF C coaching class. We need Coach B, CAF A, as well as CAF Pro coaching classes to upskill the coaches that we have within. If we're not developing those who we have, then we'll continue to be looking for potentials around the continent and around the world. But will his style fit the players that we have? Yes, because he's moved Mali up a step. We want to move up a step. We have the players. He likes to attack. Let him go out there, show us what he can do. You can't ask somebody to show us what he can do if you're tying one hand behind his back.
I don't know what you're measuring that by. Moving Mali up a step, is it because they were able to defeat Nigeria that one time, or are they other?
No,
What's the quarterfinals
because they moved from not being able to qualify for the quarterfinals in the past 10 years to falling at the group stage and the round of 16. They've moved up to now qualifying for the round of for the quarterfinals. Beating Nigeria is not something that we should use as a yardstick. Otherwise, we would have employed the coach of Central African Republic, we would have employed the coach of many other countries that have beaten Nigeria in the past 5 years.
So thank you very much for that note. So based on this now, looking at him being the coach of Mali and him moving them up a step, let's note that Nigeria also has a very, very wide array of people that could have been the coach or could have been, we had one instance with Guavon and all the frustrations that came with that one. What's the problem with a Nigerian coach, first off? And also, and I'm going to direct this one to Chukwudi, who's here in the studio with us. Note that from 1981, the coaches that we have had have lasted for years. They lasted for, at least in the beginning, 4 years at a time sometimes. And this gave them a coach-player type of bond, a coach-player type of relationship. Also, it enabled them work out strategies that were winning systems. But if you start to look from late 90s all the way down, they only lasted for a year or maybe even 6 months. Recently, just 2 or 3 months. Now, Chukwudi, what's responsible and how does this affect our national gameplay?
So I think that, in this age and time, you have more Nigerian professionals doing well in big clubs across Europe, and people expect more. But in the past, we had players who featured in great clubs, but you would not compare them to the club sides that we have our professionals today. For example, you have Victor Osimhen, who until the move to Galatasaray was playing for Napoli, did a lot to help them win the title. You have Ademola Lookman for Atalanta. You have Victor Boniface for Leverkusen, doing well in the Bundesliga. So we look at these players playing week in, week out for these clubs. And then we want them to translate that performance when they feature for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. But unfortunately, we don't get to see that. And now, a lot of Nigerians are worried because when you look at the quality of players and then you see that we are not even featuring in big competitions, you become worried and say, what exactly are the issues? I think that the NFF should have a strategy, and that's what we do not have now. In the past, they would say, okay, let's look at 2 competitions and get you to, take us to maybe the semi-finals or see what we can do. But now it's just essentially how much, who are we paying, how much do we have? You have situations where you cannot even pay the manager for months, and it becomes a scandal. It's really very, very embarrassing that you have to deal with such situations. And so you go for just about anybody. For me, I feel if we find ourselves in this situation and we do not have monies to pay certain people, I mean, you have Javier Renard, who has done well with African teams on the continent. If we cannot pay that person, let's settle, and it's not, no disrespect to say, let's just settle for a Nigerian coach. Let us decide that we are going to spend 10 years developing our football and get a manager who would, try his best to see what we can do before we proceed. In the 10 years, I'm sure he must have, gained experience, bonded with the players, and when we say, okay, in 2028, for example, or in 2030, for example, this is your target, we would know that we have given you ample time to prepare, and we're sure that you will do great.
All right, Daphne, let me ask you this, because Osman Material really set the tone for my next question about, the quality of our team and the quality of our players, and the immediate challenge that we are facing now. Eric is coming. Coach Eric is going to come and inherit a problem, right? And there seems to be something inherently wrong with the team, right? And it's clear that it's not the quality of players. So what exactly is the issue? Is it that there's a lack of patriotism? Is it that they are tired from playing at the international level? Is it that the style of coaching from, there are different coaches coming into local? What exactly is it? And what then should be the best strategy for Eric to, adopt in at least meeting the immediate goals for Super Eagles and for the nation?
I think, like Osman Material has said, you can't expect a player to just translate coaching from their club to the national team. They have to be given clear targets on the pitch. These players come in, sometimes for the first time. We have players who they call up for the first time. They are put in the national team with, I would say, minimal instructions, if you like. We've heard about coaches that will say, go and show us what you can do on the pitch. Or we have one style of playing. It's when our backs are against the wall, it's difficult to adjust our tactics. We either go out there, is it 4-2-3-1 or is it 4-3-3? And then once we find that we're behind, then sometimes the players are like rabbits in headlights, looking to the bench for instruction. What do we do now? How do we change? How do we move? Pesero came in, and when we got to the last AFCON, he actually changed it to 5 at the back, so that there's a solid defensive line, if you like, and then catch the teams on the break. But you can't fit square pegs into round holes. If the base is not solid, if we are not stable with the NFF, if we know that this coach may not even be here next month, talk less next year, then how are the players going to give the coach their best? Yes, when the players come into the camp, when they're playing for the national team, we expect them to do their best. But when you look at the management structure, when we know that if you don't give this performance today, or you don't get this result today, you're putting them under a lot of pressure. And a lot of them, let's be honest, their money doesn't come from playing for Nigeria. What comes from playing for Nigeria is one, the prestige, two, career prospects, because other clubs will see what they do for Nigeria and decide, right, this is the type of player that we get. Their daily bread comes from their clubs. It's the clubs that actually pay them. And one, they don't want to get injured playing in a way that they've not been told to. And number two, it's about just putting that foundation in. If the foundation is not in, if there isn't a solid base, then what are they standing on?
I guess it's just exactly what you said. I mean, patriotism. I don't want to get injured for Nigeria, but I will get injured for I'll do all it takes for my foreign team. So that's one thing to look at. But let's also take a look at Eric's managerial record. When he was with US Boulogne, that ended poorly. That didn't go very nicely. Had 3 points out of 10 games. And then I think not qualifying Mali, or rather qualifying Mali, but not finalizing by beating Madagascar was another poor status by him. Now, when you look at this, does it seem like this is the man that we actually need for the Super Eagles? Chukwudi, please.
I disagree. I don't think he's the one we need for the Super Eagles. I think if the NFF is trying to stabilize the situation, good for us, because you have to pay the manager. but I would have preferred if we maybe retained, Coach Augustine Iguavon or even Emmanuel Amunike. But like he has said, it's important that we invest in our indigenous coaches, get them to get the experience. Some have gone out and done well for themselves. But I think that, as a nation that, takes pride in the quality. I mean, week in, week out, you see how Nigerians are excited about, our boys and the ladies who do us proud outside the shores of this country. We must invest in football. And it's important that we, have a plan. I am up for a plan, even if it's a 10-year plan. You look at the Indigenous League and talk about investing in our league so that our players can develop.
Yeah.
I mean, South Africa is doing, and they're doing well. South Africa currently is second on the log in Group C, and Nigeria is in 5th position.
I mean, isn't that what the whole problem is? Right? From before, we used to invest in our local teams, our local league, and then you would see them rise into our national team.
Yes.
But we don't see that happening anymore. Instead, we go for the high-hanging fruit, try and bring them down into Nigeria to play for.
I also do not think that it is problematic if you get guys who are doing well abroad. But I think that you must have a plan.
The base.
We used to have Principal Cup, we used to have Shell
Exactly.
Cup, and somebody like, Mathematical Sheikh Wadegbami, went from playing at the grassroots to, being a very instrumental figure in the Green Eagles. So I think we can still have that plan. It's all politics now. You have people who, try to become...
want to bring up NFF. You're trying to bring up NFF.
Yes, but that's what it is now. We had somebody who presided over the administrative affairs of NFF saying, just think about it. Why will Nigeria not qualify for the World Cup? What do you mean just think about it?
I'm glad you're bringing this thing up because I want to talk to Daffy about this. And it's our lack of patience, especially as fans and Nigerians.
Fire him.
We are so impatient when it comes to results, and we want the results right now. And I have a theory, and I think that it is because of our past glory from 1994 to the 1996 group and 1997, and all of the things that we did during the Atlanta 1994, I think was 6. We want that same esteem, that same glory, that same feeling, that same victory, but we do not understand that things like that may take time, or it's just to get back to that point, we need the growth. Can Nigeria, whether it's the NFF, whether it's the fans, whether it's the compatriots, can they be patient for Eric to do his job?
I laugh.
I think you can only be patient when there is a clear plan. You can't just ask somebody to be patient, I'm coming, and then you have no roadmap, you have no plan, you're jumping from one frying pan to the other, you haven't even entered the fire yet. When we look at our successes, we won the Nations Cup 3 times. We won it in 1980, we won it in 94, and we won it in 2013. There is at least 10 years between each of our victory in AFCON, 10 to 15 years. Now, since the last time we won it, it's now 11 years. No, it's 11 or 20. My maths is not good, but we haven't won it for at least 10 years. And when we look at how we are going, with 4 or 5 coaches within 4 years, that is not the stability that is required. You need to plan, you need to build up your team. When we look at the current Super Eagles is built on former youth players. We won the Under-17 World Cup in 2013, we won it in 2015, and a lot of our players have come from there. You'll find that at least, I know a lot of people say we go to Europe to look for players to put into the team, but at least half of our current squad are age grade footballers. When you look at the likes of Moses Simon, he played age grade football for Nigeria. You look at the likes of even though he didn't win the World Cup, he was there under 17. I think it was 2009. The likes of Kelechi Iheanacho, the likes of Wilfred Ndidi, the likes of Osimhen, they are all former youth players, and it's been a progression for them into the seniority of the Super Eagles. Now, when we look at what have these youth teams actually done since 2015, they've come nowhere near as accomplished as their predecessors or the senior boys in the national team now. So where are we going to get these young players who are hungry, these young players who want to do well? If you don't have a foundation, if it's not stable, you can't just keep plucking players from here, there, and everywhere, or trying to convince players to switch allegiance, because a lot of players they want to play for the best team. And if Nigeria cannot show that we are the best now, we're not going to recruit the best. And the alternative, fix your youth football, fix the foundation, if you like. And we're struggling seriously with our base.
Right.
Real quick. Oh, Judith, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask about, the strategies we've been talking about and, and the plan and all of that. Well, there's one person that can only make this thing happen, or one body that can make it happen, and that's the NFF, right? And are they ready to provide the resources? I mean, because there was a time we're talking about salary not being paid or allowances not being paid. Are they ready to also hold their own end of the bargain? Because as I say it in local parlance, scratch my hand and scratch your hand, or scratch my back and scratch your back. Can they do that, to ensure that this new administration or this new dispensation is provided for, and all he needs is provided for the betterment of the club or for the team?
I think it's important to say this is what we hope to achieve with the appointment of Coach Eric. If we have that in mind, then we would know where to begin to build from, because I mean, if we cannot afford to pay certain people, and we have looked at a manager and we say we can afford to pay this manager, it's fine. But you must have a proper plan. And that plan would enable you go back and say, in 6 months, in 1 year, what have we achieved? Because the truth is, in this age and time, you don't even get to see these international games as frequently as we used to in the past. Now, the friendly games have been replaced by the Nations League in Europe. So you cannot even get grade A teams to play against. Now, what we must do is say, after 1 year, after 2 years, what have we done? How do we deal with the problems that have persisted? And so, in the next competition, what are we looking to achieve? You cannot blame us.
So I see you laying down the timeline, but what exactly is the benchmark? After 1 year, after 2 years, what do you want? What should we be expecting of Eric? What should we say? We want to have qualified for what? Or want to have gotten to second or third place? Or we want to have won the World Cup?
Looking at the quality of players, I would want the Super Eagles of Nigeria to do really well at the next edition of the Nations Cup.
What is really well?
Win the trophy.
Win the trophy.
Yes.
Now, if they don't win, then we fire him, yeah?
No, not fire him.
Isn't that what we always do?
Not fire him. Not fire him. We go back and look at the challenges, because if you get to the finals of the Nations Cup, looking at the quality of teams, when you consider certain African teams as favorites to win the World Cup, to win the Nations Cup, if you get to the finals, it means you to a considerable degree you did well. So we can go back and consolidate on our games. The problem is always going back to square one.
Okay.
When we can consolidate from maybe 40
consolidate
to 50.
on failure,
exactly.
Which is not a bad thing.
Consolidate on what's on ground. I mean, lastly, finally, just it's a yes or no question. Dafe, is Eric Chile the right choice for Super Eagles at where they are at this stage of their football? Yes or no?
I would say yes, because that's who we can afford. If we can't afford the best, then it's what money you carry to the market that will determine what you buy.
Affordability becomes desirable.
And how's the material?
I agree.
Did you cut our quotes according to the material?
Yes, I agree. And because we're not qualifying for the World Cup.
That's what you said when you walked in.
I'm not trying to be a doomsday prophet. We're in a very bad place. We're currently 5th position. You have Zimbabwe. Nobody even knows Zimbabwe for playing football. Lesotho, ahead of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. You have 3 teams on 7 points, 1 team on 5 points, and we are on 3 points after 4 games. And we still have to travel to South Africa to play against them. So what we should, as Nigerians, please, Zero your mind.
Well, listen,
if we do not qualify for the
second
World
to
Cup,
last
don't complain, don't cry.
Placed fifth on the board there. Hey, but gentlemen, many thanks for doing this with us. Dafe Otite, as well as Ezuku Chukwudi, both gentlemen football analysts. Ezuku Chukwudi, both gentlemen football analysts, just giving us a bit of insight on the new appointment of Eric Chile. Is now marks a new chapter for the Super Eagles. Whether it will be one of triumph or turbulence, only time will tell. Well, Nigerians will be watching.
What a way to round up. Thank you very much,
Thank
gentlemen.
you so much for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Stick around because coming up next is going to be sports news. We've got more. Stay here.
Welcome back just before 9 o'clock for a Sunday here on Breakfast Extra. Let's talk about a pressing issue that affects every Nigerian, the deplorable state of the country's road network. Nigeria boasts the largest road network in West Africa, yet poor infrastructure, insecurity, and years of neglect have turned these lifelines into liabilities. A new report by SBM Intelligence titled Road to Nowhere, a bumpy ride through Nigeria's roads, reveals the staggering economic, social, and also human toll of poor road conditions. From Lagos to Maiduguri, these roads cost us billions of naira annually, and causes us loss in productivity, higher transport costs, and even tragic road accidents. We've seen them all.
Oh, yes, indeed. And so joining us to unpack this report is Stanley Ikechukwu. He's the operations manager at SBM Intelligence. Now, before we bring in Stanley, here's a quick look at the highlights of SBM findings. Nigeria's road network spans over 108,000 kilometers, but over 60% of it is in poor condition. In SBM Intelligence's latest survey, 86% of transport operators report higher vehicle maintenance costs due to bad roads, with delays and increased fuel consumption further impacting businesses and also individuals as well. There are also key highways like the Lagos-Ibadan and Port Harcourt-Warri that are plagued by potholes, poor drainage and frequent security concerns. On average, travel times across major routes are 50 to 100% longer than estimated due to these issues.
It depends what you're riding. In any case, the economic implications are severe, with transport costs rising and operators passing these costs on to passengers. Insecurity remains a major concern, as over 80% of respondents report encountering or hearing about security incidents on Nigerian roads. But it's not just an economic issue, it's a matter of safety and survival. Over 28% of road users reported accidents linked to poor road conditions in the last year alone.
So let's bring in Stanley Ikechukwu, like I said from earlier. He's from SBM Intelligence, and we're going to delve deeper into this critical topic. Stanley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you travel much across Nigeria?
Yeah, interestingly, I've actually gone around Nigeria.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and, I think I'm on my second trip around Nigeria.
Fantastic, that's beautiful.
Well, I actually stopped that second trip when the banditry issue became a major problem.
Oh no. So the report calls Nigeria's road network a bumpy road to nowhere, hence our topic, Path to Nowhere. I mean, how did SBM Intelligence arrive at this conclusion, and what prompted this updated evaluation that we've seen?
So what happened is that we spoke to about 245 drivers. And we also monitored about 245 routes. So most of the drivers we spoke to, their responses remained that the roads are terrible, making it very difficult to connect state to state and city to cities. And most of the passengers we also spoke to also complained about delayed time. They get to their destination very late because of the bad roads. And also, my coming here was also very bumpy because the roads are not good. And my driver actually took about 38 minutes to arrive at my own place, even after speaking to him earlier much enough. So my point is that in the general sense of view, the roads are actually not good. And I almost missed, the timing here. It would have been a road to nowhere.
Not in itself.
Yeah, thank you that you guys extended time for me.
Thank you.
Well, we had to. You're esteemed. That's why we wanted you here.
Thank you so much.
Talking about these terrible roads, if we are to calculate, say, how much they cost Nigeria's economy, what would it be? And I'm talking about transportation of goods services, long distance. We even have to transport our own oil as well via these roads. How much is it costing us when it comes to maintenance of these vehicles or the costs that are being passed on to passengers?
Well, the truth is that I cannot exactly give you a figure, but I know it's running into billions of naira in car maintenance. If you look at the entire road, we have the A1, A2, A3, A4 road properly planned, but the distance and the bad road has actually caused a lot of drivers to spend more time at the mechanic, and cost of spare parts has actually also gone up, and they pass down this cost to passengers, which is also bringing up the issue of transport inflation currently that we're facing.
So there's bad roads, there's fuel price hike, there's maintenance of vehicle, and we are the ones paying for it as commuters, as passengers.
Yes.
Wow, that is a lot.
I'm looking at the report, right, and the report highlights varying conditions across regions. It begs to ask a question: varying conditions, and that means some parts actually have good roads and some have bad roads. So why are some roads improving while others continue to deteriorate?
So there's something about the whole system. The roads are divided into two. There's the federal government road and there's the state road. The federal government, out of the 108,000 kilometers of road that Nigeria has covered, federal government takes about 32,000 kilometers of that road. So most of the other roads that have not been done are actually state roads. And most of those state roads, you also find a lot of federal roads inside of those states. And those governors are saying that we cannot do this road because they are not under our own purview. It's the federal government road. There was a time that under Fashola, when he was Minister for Roads and States, he said that state governments can actually do some of these roads and pass down the bill to the federal government, and they will pay. But what we noticed is that our roads are always, the cost to do the road are always very high. The budget are always overpriced. So the minister then said he would no longer go ahead with that agreement.
Are bridges part of the federal purview?
Yes, there are some bridges that are part of it.
What about bridges inside of bridges generally? I was of the opinion that they were actually supposed to be federal government, hence why states don't touch them because of the large maintenance figures that have to go into. The 3rd Mainland Bridge, for instance, that's a federal.
Yeah, that's a federal, but there are some other bridges inside so many states that are actually owned by states and were commissioned by state governments.
Another theme that was recurring in this report was insecurity. What practical steps do you think that the government is taking to tackle insecurity, especially on the roads, for the safety of road users? Because you just said you were going on a tour of Nigeria again a second time and then had to pause because of banditry.
Okay, so if you look at, say, the A4 road, where it starts from Cross River State and ends in Maiduguri, that route is actually very bad. The port is not working. That's why we see a lot of congestion in Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. If the port in, say, Cross River State was working, there will be no need for people to come down to Lagos to do the shipping and the clearing. They just do it in Cross River and they move straight to Maiduguri. Now, talking about the security, where the insecurity actually started was on that A4 road. Boko Haram, Maiduguri State, it was on that A4 road. Herdsmen issue, farmers and herdsmen issue, Plateau State and Benue State is on the A3 and A4 roads. The whole IPOP and Biafra agitation is also on that A3 road, actually, the East-West road. So those are where the security issues have actually turned into the other states. Now, the federal government has done some things, but I don't think it's enough. We've done more of the stick approach, like fighting this insecurity, trying to curb the whole problem. But we also need to look at what are causing these issues, which is the carrot. Yeah. So we need to actually improve the economic standards of living for people. We need to reopen, the ports outside of Lagos, so that the economic activities on this road can begin to thrive.
I will break you there, Ikechukwu. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go on a short break because when we return, Judith will be bringing us the news, and then after that, we'll continue this discussion on the road to nowhere, taking a look at the state of Nigerian roads. We'll be back.
And you're welcome back. Unfortunately, we won't be able to bring you the news for this hour. That's the headline news at this hour, but not to worry. We'll bring you the full package or the full bulletin at the top of the hour for 12 noon. It's back to our discussion on our roads, and that is the Nigerian roads now, which is giving a report by SBM Intelligence. Joining us in the studio to continue the discussion is Stanley Ikechukwu. He's the operations manager at SBM Intelligence. He's giving us more insight on the cost of neglecting Nigeria's road network. Now, before the break, we're talking about insecurity on the roads and basically what it means for Nigeria's commutes, and then we also talked about, the cost of it, who should bear the cost of repairs, whether the state government or the federal government. One of the things that was made mention in this report was the amount that it cost in terms of productivity for our country. And I think that I need for you to put into perspective what we're losing every single day because of this road, because of the state of our roads.
Okay, thank you for that question. Like I said, let me go back to when we started this conversation. I was supposed to be here earlier than this, but because of the timing, the driver didn't come on time. So if it was a business I was going for, I probably would have missed that business because the roads are not good. That was what the driver complained about. The roads were bumpy, potholes, and all of that. So I came late, but you guys were gracious enough to still accommodate me. If it was a business transaction, I might have lost it. So these are some of the issues that affects productivity. Delayed timing. You spend more than what is required to cover a distance. Say a distance of Calabar Itu Road into Port Harcourt usually will take around 55 minutes, but because of the bad conditions of the road, it's taking almost 4 hours.
Warri to Port Harcourt, did you say?
No, Calabar Itu
Road into Port Harcourt. Yeah, so it's taking about 4 hours. Yeah, and every time costs money. The driver is not going to just buy fuel and burn everything on the road. He would have to pass the cost down to the consumer. Also, if you are able to cover the distance on time, which means efficiency, you are able to make more money. If a delivery guy is supposed to deliver something to somebody, and he said in 30 minutes because I need to be at the airport, I have a trip, and we're not there in 30 minutes, he cancels it. That's also a loss for businesses like that, and we've seen it around so many businesses. Yeah, agricultural products
good roads would actually increase the frequency of time that he could go on rounds.
Exactly.
That's more productivity for him.
Exactly.
But where there are bad roads, it's the other way around.
And also bringing down food commodity from the north down to Lagos, because most of these goods are perishable. If you spend, like tomato, it has to arrive.
Tell me about that.
Very quick. If you spend more than a day on the road, most of these things begin to deteriorate.
I'll tell you a story.
If you go to say my 12 now, most of the trucks that land with perishable goods, you see more than half of it are being thrown away, wasted. The other half, the prices are increased so that they can, make
recover their loss.
I'll tell you a story. Once endeavored in agriculture, and it was a bad endeavor because half of my produce just perished on the way. So I never tried it again. And it was due to the bad roads. Funny that we're having this conversation now. That was about 12 years or so ago. However, we're talking about the state of these roads, but we're actually overlooking one bit, the quality of the roads or the quality of maintenance of these roads. We see contracts being awarded here and there. We see these fine, beautiful roads put up after so much back and forth. But no sooner are they opened or what's the word when you cut the thing, launched, they go bad again. So is there any adequate quality, how do you put it, assurance that goes into checking these contractors and the quality that they're using to make these roads? Because most of the good roads in the north are from the 80s and they still stand till today. The roads that are made last year, I can tell you a couple of them that have been washed up. Go to Ekiti, for instance. Last year, they tried. But now, all those good roads have been washed out.
Okay, let's look at the north. You said most of the roads there have been done since in the 80s and they're still standing the test of time. There was a trip I did from Sokoto down to Goronyo. It was about, we drove for like 45 minutes, no car passed us and we didn't pass any car.
That would happen.
So it simply meant that those roads are actually not they don't use heavy traffic. When you compare to roads down south here, where you move most of the trucks, from time to time, those heavy loads are on it. But again, more importantly, the roads that we do down here south, the contracts are always overhyped, over increased, and it's because of the kickbacks. Say a contractor is being awarded a road for 10 naira now, the people who made it possible for him are taking, say, 4 naira out of it. Yeah, and the cost of the road, the contractor is actually going to make his own profits. So whatever is left is what he uses to do the road. All what they want to say is, okay, the road has been done, but we don't look at the quality because kickbacks have been paid and the money available is not enough to actually provide quality roads. So that's why we're seeing most of those roads in the south here that doesn't last.
And lastly, because we're pretty much pressed for time, despite yearly allocations, because we're back at this conversation again in terms of budgets, and a majority, a substantial amount, a percentage of all this budget, whether at the federal or at the state level, goes into capital projects and infrastructure, road infrastructure. And so it begs to ask the question: in spite of all of this, is little progress visible? What is the issue? Is it implementation? Is it not enough capital, or not enough allocation, or is it just corruption?
The three of them.
Hi.
The three of them. If we look at it from the corruption side of it, like I mentioned, the contracts are always over-bloated, and there's always kickbacks. So before you know, those roads, the cost to do the roads will reduce. Talking about implementation again, they don't go back to inspect some of these roads to be sure because they've collected kickbacks, so it should be of no use. Then on the budgeting side, and we don't have so much money at the moment to say we want to build some of those super strong roads. So those are part of the reasons why these roads don't last.
And lastly, the report also suggested leveraging on public-private partnership, PPPs, to fund and manage capital, and in this case, road infrastructure. How visible is this?
So some of the PPPs actually work, and I think that's like the best way to go, because when the private people put in their money, they make sure that they bring in quality and they bring in the best of hands. We've seen the Lekki concession, the Lekki seaport was a PPP project. The Azuri power project that built about 453 megawatts was a PPP project.
The concrete road in Apapa that was Dangote refinery.
That was more like
write-off on his tax.
Yeah, exactly. So the Abuja hospital was PPP. We've seen the BRT actually is also PPP, funded by private individuals. The Lagos education scheme also has some PPP in it.
But for roads, you're going to transfer that cost back to the people who use these roads.
Yeah, as tolls. But if you ask me, I think it makes sense to pay tolls when the roads are good, because if you calculate what you're paying in toll every month and compare it to what you'll be paying to mechanics, it makes sense to even pay the toll.
All right, thank you. That's
Sally, always very insightful conversation having you join us. And I didn't say Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you.
Welcome to 2025.
Thank you. Welcome. That's pretty much all we can take here. Stanley Ikechukwu, he is the operations manager for SBM Intelligence, has given us a big insight on the cost of neglecting Nigeria's road network after their recent report on the state of the Nigerian road network. We'll go on a short break. When we come back, it's going to be Wellness Central, and this time, January is a month for awareness for cervical cancer. We'll talk all about this after the break. Join us again.
Welcome again, this time into Wellness Central, our little segment here for health. Now, January is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, a time dedicated to raising awareness about cervical cancer, its prevention, and the importance of early detection. Cervical cancer remains one of the leading causes of cancer-related deaths among women worldwide. But with regular screening and vaccinations, it is largely preventable, they say.
And so today we're honored to have with us Dr. Tewa Onasonya. She's the founder, executive, or rather she's the founder, Exquisite Magazine Cancer Care Foundation, which is an organization committed to supporting cancer patients and promoting cancer awareness. Dr. Onasonya, thank you for joining us, and good morning to you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
I mean, doctor, let's just start. You know, as we observe Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, could you share with our viewers the significance of this observance and why it's crucial for women's health?
Right, thank you very much. So January is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, and a lot of people don't know this, and a lot of people are not even aware about cervical cancer, what it is, how it can be prevented, why screening is important, which is why every year, January and all through the month, we're always talking about cervical cancer. Cervical cancer kills 1 woman every hour in Nigeria. This is from the stats record from the WHO, and cervical cancer is one of the few cancers that is 100% preventable. But people don't know this, and people are not aware that getting screened is important to preventing cervical cancer. The reason we say it's 100% preventable is because it's also one of the few cancers that presents a precancerous stage before it becomes full-blown cancer. Now, I'm sure, like I was watching News Central this week, and there was a survey done, and some women on the streets said they didn't know about cervical cancer. This is what we're going through in Nigeria, and in parts of the world as well. A lot of people don't know about cervical cancer. Yes, they know about breast cancer, but cervical cancer awareness is very, very low. This is why we're championing the cause, making sure that every year and as often as we can, we're telling people about cervical cancer, how to prevent it, and the importance of getting screened and vaccinated.
Well, that's very interesting. About the cervical cancer, you just noticed some very interesting bits here. It is 100% preventable. It presents before it becomes cancer. I also always hear of the human papilloma virus each time I hear about these screenings and the vaccination. So what's the relationship between cancer and HPV?
Right, so HPV, as you rightly said, is human papilloma virus. And guess what? This virus lives harmlessly on men. But when certain strains of this virus gets into the woman, then, it could start getting the cells to replicate at an abnormal rate in the cervix, which could eventually become cervical cancer. Now, I said 100% preventable because once regular screening is being done, these abnormal cells that are probably growing can be caught early, and then it can be treated before it becomes full-blown cancer. Now, cervical cancer is so, I want to use the word so nice to women because, and the reason I say that is because before it becomes cancer, it introduces itself with the abnormal cells. So when women are getting screened regularly, this can be caught and then they can be treated. And then another big thing, which is, another big reason I say that it's nice to women is because there are HPV vaccines as well that can prevent cervical cancer. So we're championing and, letting people know about these different things that could eventually save their lives. Women, children, people who are sexually active, even the young children that are not sexually active yet, getting vaccinated. This will prevent cancer, HPV-related cancer from occurring in their lives. So it is, that is the relationship between HPV and cervical cancer. And there are HPV testings that can be done as well to check the level of HPV in the woman so that to prevent cervical cancer in future.
So when does it become impossible to treat, or when does it become, cancer? When is there?
Right.
What's the point of no return for the HPV
the
virus?
point of no return.
Yeah.
So I won't say it's the point of no return, even though when it becomes cancer, it is the point of no return to an extent. But another nice thing about cervical cancer is it has an incubation period of about 10 years, which is why that screening is is important to be done regularly. So from a time the abnormal cells start growing to about 5 to 10, let me say 5 to 10 years later, it doesn't become cancer until 5 to 10 years later, which is why if screening had been done, it would have been noticed and it would have been caught and then treated. Now, 5 to 10 years later is when it now becomes cancer. That is when we're now talking about, treatments that now become expensive and invasive as well. We're talking, chemotherapy, we're talking We're talking colonoscopy, we're talking, other different things that are now expensive to treat. Do you understand what I'm saying? And
yes,
at that point, that is when women now start seeing symptoms. Because during the pre-stages, there are no symptoms. But when it now becomes cancer, that is when women start seeing different symptoms in their bodies, symptoms like abnormal discharge during periods, symptoms like, maybe pain during sexual intercourse, and things like that.
And let's talk about, screening, right? Because as always, early detection is the best route to go. What are the recommended screening methods for cervical cancer, and how often should women undergo these screenings?
Right. The most popular ones are the pap smear and cytology. So pap smear and cytology. So if a woman does a pap smear test, that is meant to be done every 3 years. So every 3 years, you go to your healthcare professional to get screened using the pap smear one. The cytology can be done every 5 years because that one is a little bit more intense, so to speak, and that can be done every 5 years. Now there's another one which is used for mass screening, which is what we do at the Exquisite Magazine Cervical Cancer Prevention Foundation, which is a method using the VIA method, and VIA is visual inspection using acetic acid. Now with this method, screening is meant to be done every year, and the reason we use this method is because it's cheaper. And we say to people, if you can't afford to do the pap smear, at least do the VIA that you can do every year, so at least you know what the status is. And with the VIA, which is, like I said earlier, visual inspection using the acetic acid, once the acetic acid is put into the vagina, I don't know if I can say that on air, but into the female private part, when there's a discoloration, that's when they know if there are potential abnormal cells growing. Now if that is seen, then they can be referred to for further tests. Even the pap smear as well, once that is done, that is, every of the tests involves going in to the woman to collect samples. And some people might find it, a lot of people might find it a bit painful or a bit invasive, but then again, it's 5 minutes of discomfort to check if anything is growing, and to have that, to have that screening done to prevent anything further happening.
Right. I mean, Dr. Nasanya, you are the founder of Exquisite Magazine Cancer Care Foundation, and that means that you have come across a number of women and men who have misconceptions about, cervical cancer, about the screening, about, HPV. And so I have to ask you, what are some of the most bizarre misconceptions you've heard, in just, caring for cancer patients and raising awareness about cervical cancer?
We've heard different stories, it's unbelievable, different misconceptions. Some women actually don't even know that they have cervix. Would you believe that?
Oh, wow.
That is why awareness is key, because we've done a survey in different parts of Lagos and different parts of Nigeria where people are saying, what is a cervix? Or do women have a cervix? And some men are quite knowledgeable. Some, very small percentage of men are quite knowledgeable, but a lot of people are not. And then some people can come to you and say, oh, cervical cancer, I thought you can only get it because you smoke a lot. And I'm like, no. Yes, it could be one of the reasons, but it's not the only reason. And because they're smokers doesn't mean they're gonna get it. Another one is what's another one? Okay, another one is the pain thing. A lot of women think that the few women, not a lot, but the women that know about cervical cancer think that the screening is very, very painful. And I'm like, no, I mean, when you're going for the screening, yes, they'll explain a little bit to you, and then yes, the curriculum is going into you anyway, but then again, it's 5 minutes of discomfort. But the big one is the fact that a lot of people don't know that it could be sexually, that it's via sex as well, because a lot of people can say that, it can be prevented using condoms or things like that. Yes, condoms are great protection, but then again, HPVs can spread in any way, so they're not great prevention. Another misconception is people saying, oh, I'm a virgin, I've never had sex before, so I can't have cervical cancer. Yes, that is true, but then again, you could have been in contact with HPV somehow, so you do need, especially when you're in your 20s, I'd say maybe 25 upwards, you do need to at least get yourself of HPV tested. So those are some of the misconceptions that we've come across.
Let me take you back to two responses back where you talked about the fact that you have to repeatedly go for these screenings.
Yes.
Why must you go repeatedly? Isn't one time good enough? Especially perhaps maybe if one is being celibate. Wouldn't one time be just okay?
So one time is not enough because remember I said that it has an incubation period of almost 10 years. Yeah. So let's say, a woman is, sexually active just once in her life, yeah, and then unfortunately comes in contact with a man that has a strain of HPV that would affect her. If she goes in the first year and, the cells are great, nothing's happening, remember it has an incubation period of almost 10 years. So within those 10 years, anything can happen. That's why it's advised that you go every 3 years or every 5 years or every year, depending on which test you do. That incubation period is a critical one because it might be caught early or it might be caught later. So it's important for the screening to be done regularly. And really and truly, the age that we advise people that you can eventually stop screening, I think is probably in your 60s. Then we can say, oh, you don't really need to go every 3 years anymore. But if you're as a sexually active woman, even if you've only had sex once, every 3 years or 5 years or 1 year, depending on the test you do, is crucial because of that incubation period.
I remember my foray into the mall one day. There were people who were there talking about HPV and also talking about cervical cancer, but most importantly, trying to get people to sign on to get vaccines. And while standing there and just watching them and paying attention to them as they're trying to canvass for people to come on and sign up for this, a lot of people turned down signing up because they realized they had to pay for the vaccines. And so let's talk about this, in our cost of living crisis that we find ourselves in this climate, health always seems to take the back burner,
Yeah.
So let's talk about, just how important it is for this HPV vaccines and, and also most importantly for, private sector and, public sector to come together to sort of subsidize the price of the vaccines so that more women can have the vaccines.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Now, you are right. In economic crisis, health does take the back seat. I mean, we've been to rural areas to go and screen people for free, and they're like, instead of screening us, why don't you just give us the money? We'd rather buy food and things like that. This is something that, needs to be talked about a lot as well, because, if you're healthy, then you'd be able to go out there and do more to sustain yourself financially, so to speak. And yes, it would be nice if the vaccines are free. It would be nice if they're subsidized as well. A lot of organizations are working on getting these vaccines subsidized. I know that the federal government, I think last year, did a lot of vaccination in some states in Nigeria, free actually for the children. Just so, on this journey of reducing the deaths of cervical cancer. So I suppose more still needs to be done, but organizations, even like ours as well, with the Exquisite Magazine Cancer Care Foundation, sometimes we're able to raise money to screen, sometimes you're able to raise money to not only screen people, but to also provide vaccination. In the past, we've done about almost 100 free vaccinations for children in different parts of Lagos. So it is important for it to be subsidized because they are quite expensive, and a child needs 2 shots, and adults need 3 shots of these vaccines over a period of time. So I mean, the prayer is for organizations to be supported enough to be able to do this free screening, to do this free vaccination, even free screening as well, because you have to still pay for the screening. It's not complete, it's not free in Nigeria, unlike other parts of the world where like in England, for instance, screening is free. As long as you're from 21 and above, screening is free. So it's still not free in Nigeria, but it's something that we're canvassing for, and it's something that we're working with, so to speak, to make sure that at least screening is free and then vaccination is subsidized. And I have to say something about vaccination as well, because a lot of people forget this. Some people, which is a misconception actually, some women think, sexually active women think that when they've been vaccinated with the HPV virus, they don't need to get screened again. But but this is untrue. You still need to get screened because because of that incubation period that I talked about earlier.
Okay. How does one, female, reduce risks? Save vaccinations or regular screening? What habits could be taken to reduce risk of getting the HPV and further cancer?
Right. Habits include limiting the number of sexual partners you have. The reason we say this is because remember I said earlier that different strains of the HPV live harmlessly in men. So limiting the number of sexual partners you have, definitely getting screened regularly, getting the HPV vaccine. Smoking is a contraindication as well. So we advise that people either stop smoking or reduce their smoking intake, and basically just taking care of yourselves and the immune system, because when the immune system is compromised, the possibility of cancers developing is higher.
I mean, Doctor, I must say thank you so much for just taking out the time to just join us for this conversation. It's been one that is very important and needed and timely, and when it comes to women's health as well. I mean, I always say that medicine and science have not done us a favor when it comes to reproductive health and and so much more for women. And well done for all the work you've been doing with Exquisite Magazine Cancer Foundation. Once again, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, before we wrap up this conversation, our reporter, our correspondent, Bettina Unweli, has a small report on cervical cancer awareness for this month. Take a look.
The HPV virus that causes cervical cancer lives harmless in men. It's only when a certain strain gets into women that it becomes cervical cancer.
The month of January is the Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, serving as a reminder for women to take proactive steps towards their health. According to the World Health Organization, cervical cancer is the fourth most common cancer in women globally, but with early detection, it is highly treatable.
I'm not aware about cervical cancer.
No, I don't know about it. I'll hear about it, but I don't know about it.
I've heard about cervical cancer, but I don't really know much about it. But I know it's prone to women, and it's the cancer of the cervix. I know about the human papilloma virus, and I know about its vaccine. I have been vaccinated.
According to the Information Center on HPV and Cancer, approximately 12,075 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer each year in Nigeria, with about 7,968 succumbing to the disease, making it the second most frequent cancer among Nigerian women and the second leading cause of cancer deaths among women aged 15 to 44.
Cervical cancer is one of the cancers that presents no symptoms until it has become cancer. That is why we're, ringing on the bells, knocking on doors, letting people know that cervical cancer is preventable. And the reason it's preventable is because before it becomes cancer, we can catch it early when the precancerous cells are growing. So women won't know that they have cervical cancer until it has gotten to the bad stage.
In 2020, the latest year for which data is available, Nigeria recorded 12,000 new cases and 8,000 deaths from cervical cancer.
If people are not aware of anything that's happening, then they will be ignorant and deaths will be occurring. Cervical cancer is 100% preventable. So if you're a woman that is sexually active, ask your doctor about, doing the smear test. Ask your doctor about cervical cancer prevention. If you have children or girls especially, from the ages of 9, get them vaccinated. When you get children vaccinated at that age, you're preventing one case of cancer being prevented for the rest of their lives. Another thing is for women to go and get HPV tested. Let's know your status. Know, if there's HPV in your system and things like that. It's important to raise that awareness.
The month of January isn't just about resolutions. Schedule your screening, talk to your healthcare provider about the HPV vaccine, and share this knowledge with all and sundry in order to make a difference by spreading awareness and encouraging preventive care in Nigeria. In Lagos, for News Central, I am Bettina Unwili.
Welcome to Focus Africa, is where we bring you insightful discussions on key events shaping the African continent. And today we turn our attention to Ghana, where John Dramani Mahama has been inaugurated as the country's president for a second non-consecutive term. Now, Mahama's return to power marks a critical juncture in Ghana's democratic journey, celebrated globally for its stability and transparency in elections. However, his administration inherits significant challenges and economic recovery and inflation to governance reforms, as well as job creation.
So joining us this morning to delve deeper into that Mahama's leadership on what it means for Ghana and the broader African context is Etse Isikanku, Associate Professor from the University of Media, Arts and Communications, Ghana. Etse Isikanku, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much to both of you once again for having me.
Yes, so there's so much to unpack here with Mahama's return to power. It's a significant political development, but what does his election or re-election victory say about Ghana's democracy?
Thank you very much. I think it signifies a further establishment and a further entrenchment of democracy on the continent. It also shows that Ghana's democracy is stable and has continued to mature over time, and that this is a democracy that it has been tried and tested, and it is one that has faced very different permutations. You know, if we had a lopsided outcome all the time, then questions may be asked. But this is a democracy that has traveled in a way that there have been changes to different governments or different administrations over time. In fact, we experienced the first one-term president under John Mahama, and it's the first time that we've had a one-term president go away. A president comes for 2 terms, and then this one-term president comes back. So I think it further establishes Ghana's democracy as a very, very rigorous and a very established one.
Very established one. Interesting. We all saw the inauguration. Was very interesting. There's a few things that I'd like to talk about there. But before we do that, I wanted to draw a parallel between this second non-consecutive term and draw the parallel between what's happening in the U.S. Trump as well will be inaugurated into office, and of course it will be his second non-consecutive time as well. What parallel can we draw here regarding what the people want for their leaders or from their leaders in the case of America as compared to Ghana?
You know, I think it's very interesting the way in which these things happen. I really don't know, but it does look like maybe this is why it's important to do comparative exercises and to do international studies, because the concept of democracy is a common one to many countries, including Ghana, Nigeria, the United States, Western African countries. That's a global journey that most countries in the world are going on. So it's interesting that you bring in the United States, which is seen as one of the major paragons or the major bulwarks or leaders of democracy in the world. And for Ghana to be mimicking, well, not mimicking, but at least to be experiencing some of the things that an enhanced or established democracy like the US is experiencing, says something about the fact that democracy can also work in Africa. Because Donald Trump became president in 2016. He was kicked out in the 2020 elections, and he's back in 2024. The same thing, President Mahama lost in 2020, you know, and he is coming back in 2024. In fact, he also lost in 2016, lost in 2020, and he's back again in 2024. So it's very interesting that this has happened, but I think on a global level, it shows, for me, one thing that I can say is that it shows that the people are becoming more and more discerning. It shows that the old frameworks within which we look at politics is not the same again. In the past, once you were an incumbent, you had a certain advantage. once you were part of the establishment, it meant you had a certain advantage because you had access to power, you had access to resources, you had access to networks, you had access to the media, and so it was likely that you'd use all of this to your advantage and come back to power. But an incumbent like Donald Trump lost the election. An incumbent like President Mahama, remember he was president actually before he lost. Also, he was not a fresh candidate, also lost an election. So those are incumbents losing. And I think it shows that the people are becoming more and more discerning and that democracy is becoming more and more responsive. I think for Ghana in particular, I think that I'm trying to find the right words, but it shows a certain growth even in the political culture or even in the democratic culture. And I say this because previously people used to vote en masse or in one block. You know, you identify as NPP or one party and that is it. Or tribal, they vote according to tribal lines. Right. Or they just vote based on what they see in the media, based on what politicians say, and based on who is popular, who has attention in the media and all of that.
I guess you used the right word from before, which is discerning.
It's to be fair, right? And you know, so I think we're also missing a larger picture in this conversation, and that is pre-COVID. You know, the two incumbents who have now been, you know, elected, and Mahama has now been sworn in, and President-elect Trump will soon be sworn in. Is that they were all pre-COVID, you know, presidents, and they all speak of their rhetoric was of a time of economic stability, you know, and they are inheriting a period where there's now a living cost crisis, high living cost crisis due to post-COVID. Which is there. There's also inflation. There's so much going on, which Mahama is about to inherit. Also, Mahama himself also faced allegations of corruption, which was a platform that he campaigned on this time, saying that there'll be more transparency and much more accountability with his time at office. And so I have to ask you, with all of those challenges that he's inheriting, is he poised to bring solution to the people of Ghana?
Yes, I don't know how much of a factor COVID is now. It definitely was in 2020. I can say for sure that Donald Trump's management of COVID was definitely one of the major factors that led to his outset from power. In Ghana, it was in a more economic sense. But in terms of the management of COVID, I think that the general feeling was that President Akufo-Addo did manage the COVID quite well. And I mean, that verdict has come from both local and international organizations and agencies. And so I think to that extent, that is what we can say about COVID. But in terms of the effects, I think the economic effects may be what affected President Akufo-Addo. Definitely, although people have said that we've gone beyond COVID. You might say COVID, and definitely the government will say that, but there are a lot of Ghanaians who would say that, well, you cannot attribute everything to COVID and that COVID is past and gone. Other countries faced COVID and they are trying to get out of it. But the government's argument was that it was just too much of an albatross, too much of an unprecedented event that it affected the country. But the fact of the matter is that the economy did slip. People were facing very challenging times, and President Mahama came to power on the back of promises or a campaign based on the economy. So to your question, what is the expectation? In fact, the major policy framework or the major campaign message or theme that characterized his campaign was that he promised a 24-hour economy. And that really caught on fire. It's an economic policy, but which can actually be summed up into a short bumper sticker word: 24-hour economy. And that really flew with the people. Yes. And I think moving forward, that is what Ghanaians are going to be looking forward to.
And the world as well will be looking forward to that, because he made that statement during his inauguration, his speech, was saying that, you know, Ghana is open for business and, you know, they want a 24-hour economy. But away from that, he also talked about climate change as well, and the ballooning, you know, population of the world, and how, you know, very, you know, very insightful solutions need to be made to address climate change. Seeing what's happening on the global stage, is he also poised for that? Is that all something that is at the forefront of discussion in Ghana?
Yes, he did. He talked about the economy, but he also talked about a green economy. He talked about Ghana's contributions to looking for sustainable energy, more environmentally friendly energy sources. And so, yes, there is the commitment to green jobs, to green energy, to cleaner energy, to more innovation and more sustainable forms of energy to power the industry and to provide more opportunities for jobs, to protect the environment. But I'll tell you that one of the major features of the administration is accountability. You know, I'll tell you what, there were a lot of Ghanaians who were not very happy with the expenditure of the previous government. They were not happy with the scandals, and they were definitely not happy with the governance of the country. And one of it had to do with issues concerning corruption, accountability, and the president had promised, it was one of the major things, that he was going to come and make sure that people were accountable and that all those who were culpable of spending the country's money would be held. And so one of the major things he did, even before the swearing in, is that he formed what he called the Oral Committee, and that is a committee for the retrieval of state loot, the retrieval of state money and anything that had been looted. Right. So many Ghanaians are looking forward to that. That's one of the first things that they are looking forward to, that maybe they'll be jailing some ministers, they'll be calling previous government officials who might have been perceived to have stolen money to face the full rigors of the law. And I can tell you that it's one thing that if the president doesn't fulfill, a lot of people will be very, very angry, because people are now very concerned about how government uses their money, and it is based on that they vote.
Isikanku, thank you very much. We're coming to the end of this conversation, but I just wanted to draw another parallel. Your president said Ghana is open for business. Judith, what did our president say? Subsidy is removed.
Subsidy is gone.
Yeah, but then again, there was another instance during the inauguration that caught our eye, and it was the presence of Burkina Faso leader Ibrahim Traore, and the applause that came after that. This is an interest for West Africa. With that kind of reception, what does that say about West African democracy?
It's a very interesting question. And
I hope you will summarize, however, because we're out of time. Well, go ahead.
Okay. You said I should summarize. How many minutes?
just 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
I know, thank you.
What? Go ahead.
2 minutes.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, please. Give me your best
minutes.
shot. Yes, give me your best shot.
Okay. Oh, was that question meant for somebody else?
No, it was meant for you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. All right. So I think that it was something that really caught the eye of many people. But you see, what I think is that there's an appetite for more discipline. There is an appetite for out-of-the-box leaders. The people are very, very, very disenchanted with career politicians. People want political outsiders, people who come and get a job done, people who come and hold people accountable. I've heard people on the streets say a lot of times that I think what Africa needs, or what Ghana needs, it's military government or military dictatorship, because there is just too much impunity in government. Under democracy, everybody just does anything that they want. And there's also a certain recognition that a Burkinabe leader is young, he's energetic, and he's doing something new or doing something different out there in Burkina Faso. And I think these are the kind of things that ordinary people are looking for. And it seems that if they would get it, whether in a democracy or a military regime, they're probably willing to go in for it, as far as the government will serve their needs and will be there for them. And so I think it's something we begin to take more seriously, that they would applaud a military ruler. Right. I mean, that definitely is a very strong message. for West Africa, and it's something that we should explore more in the future.
Siganko, you've done a brilliant, at that question there, because, and then it just begs to ask a question about whether or not we are myopic, because if they're saying that democracy, the leaders of our democratic system have ruled with impunity, then what do we say about the military themselves, when it comes to impunity? But we do, maybe this conversation will be for another time. But many thanks. We appreciate you for doing this with us and for coming on. And shout out to the little ones behind you there. We see them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.